Combing tracks for frequencies, I'm going to go through very quickly. If you look at a sound like this in the spectrum analyzer, it's a great little thing that comes with most sequencer programs. You can really have a look at where the frequencies of sounds are hitting. That kind of thing. It's pretty cool. So if you use that on, for example, in this track, a good example would actually be on the bass line. Let's use it. Let's check it out in a state where it's not being automated so much. So basically, with a spectrum analyzer, you can comb your whole mix. You can look at where the frequencies hit. Something like this looks pretty good, I think. You know, there's not too much going on that you really want to get rid of. But basically, when you comb the mix for frequencies, you're looking for things that are causing more confusion than good. With a bass line, anything like that, I can guarantee you like 130 hertz is going to be a bit crap. Just in terms of clarity. That resonance can be a really, really bad thing, so you need to watch out for it a little bit. When you're doing vocals and things like that, you know, a lot of drum sounds as well, you'll have certain things that have frequency spikes. I think it's sort of important to note that it's good to get rid of, you know, frequency spikes in a sound. Like, for example, in a vocal, when you have a vocal, there'll be certain syllables that will resonate at a certain frequency that you should kind of notch out, you know, and you should seriously go through most of the sounds in your project, really, and just see where everything hit. Like this kick that I use has a particularly interesting looking thing. You could almost look at this and say, right, okay, this frequency here, what is it, like 1.18? You could almost go as far as to say that that could be turned up, you know, because of the way that that spectrum analyzer looks. So that particular frequency there could probably be turned up, that kind of thing. And so you can look at these charts and sort of say, okay, well, there's this huge spike of this frequency at a certain point. But that can actually be a good thing as well. You can actually have kind of like creative frequency spikes. So when it comes to combing these sounds, if you have a sound that you feel is you know, confusing the mix or is muddy or whatever, it's probably better to go and find frequencies that you just don't like with your ears, rather than actually look at a spectrum analyzer and go, okay, the spectrum analyzer should be the second thing that you trust when you're EQing, and the first thing should just be whether it sounds bad to your ears or not, you know. And yeah, and bad sort of frequencies for that kind of thing are 130 hertz for bass, and then there's this kind of 300 hertz mud area where nothing really exciting happens in any kind of sound that you can think of, you know. And yeah, some people I know when they actually master, they'll go to their EQ on the master track, and they'll just like get rid of that 300 hertz altogether. So yeah, getting creative with buses, I just want to show you quickly. And this, I have to give total kudos to Soundprank from Canada for this, because it's his bus that he has allowed me to steal from him, basically. And it's a really good example of what you can do with buses. So this is, let me see if I have it in here, Colin Reverb. And this is just an example of how crazy you can get with some of the effects. So I'm going to take this whoosh, for example, which once again is going nuts down there on the spectrum analyzer. I'm going to send it to this Colin Reverb channel and just see how it sounds. Now what you're hearing there is a 26-second reverb, followed by a slightly modulating auto filter that we had before, a vocoder that's blending the sound with just a white noise signal, a really, really slow phaser, a really, really slow flanger, and quite a tough kind of compressor. So which I think is just absolutely awesome because of the fact that the way he's got the phase set up on these little plugins down here actually means that it fills this really kind of low and wide space that is not occupied by anything else in the mix. So that's just an example of some cool stuff that you can do with buses. Another thing that's fun to do is using plugins like Effectrix, or I think there's one called Glitch for the PC, and you can put that on basically a bus and send stuff to that, and it'll basically just provide you with little backup studded versions of whatever sounds you're using. So that's pretty cool as well. Parallel compression, I'm just going to show you quickly as well. Also something I would use a bus for. Parallel compression is basically kind of similar to what we were doing before with the cytomic, the glue, and using that mix basically. So yeah, it's basically taking a sound. Probably, in fact, I could probably use this whoosh again, just give it the royal treatment. And it's basically taking a super compressed version of that. This can be good for vocals, for lead synth lines, things like that. And basically having an extremely compressed version of that. And it's basically taking a version of that sound that is pushed really hard and is extreme and dirty, and then mixing it with a dry signal as well, so that there's a bit of clarity to it as well. So this sounds probably really loud now. Which just helps bring things up in the mix as well. So yeah, that's another way to bring out some loudness in the mix. This I'm going to go through pretty quickly just because it's pretty self-explanatory. I've had quite a few tracks in the past where, say, for example, the drum track, like that whole drum stem has been sort of like up to 5 dB louder than it should be. So the best way to establish focus of parts, basically, is to compare them with other tracks. I'm going to show you that in a second, just what I do like for my process of comparing with other tracks. And I was also going to say, for example, it's also good to think about having different levels of loudness for different sections of the track. For example, I have that automation on this line here from before, if you remember. So I could, for example, make it louder just for that one section. If I wanted to stick out, I could take this Atmos line, for example, and turn it down. So that other stems can take the focus just for one section. And see what happened there is that bass stem had all the focus in that breakdown, and when it made the switch back into the beat going again, it sort of switched over to the incidental effects and that big whoosh that is now really loud. So yeah, so you can basically throw the focus back and forth. If you have all these meaningful stems that are all kind of cool in their own right, then you should give them a chance to sing out at certain different points. Allow for amplification at master phase I pretty much went through before. That's basically just, let the track sound kind of, it can sound kind of pretty dry. Some of the pre-masters that I send to the label for mastering, I freak out that they just sound way too kind of like straight out of the project kind of thing. You actually want to kind of allow a bit of space, remembering with all that amplification off that I put on before, everything's actually pretty quiet and not pushed very hard at all. And compared to how it sounds with these on, and especially if you're signing a track and getting somebody else who's really good at mastering to do it, you'll be amazed at like the kind of stuff they can do with your very otherwise dry sounding mix. So yeah, I just want to show you, I realize we're sort of getting close to the cutoff time here, so I'm just going to show you a couple of things here.